All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how to force Final Cut Pro to use ease in, ease out keyframe characteristics. So I'm going to use an example here from mObject. This is from MotionVFX.com. I've been using mObject as a generator and a plugin for a long time. So I'm going to drop this down here, and I'm literally just using this specific plugin as an example of how you can alter the keyframe characteristics. I'm going to go up to these controls that they give you in the top right, sorry. And let's just say we're going to keyframe, we're going to do a camera fly in and tell the Mac Pro here, the Mac Pro bucket, to spin. So we're going to keyframe there, and then we're going to move forward 5 seconds. I'm going to spin that about here, go back up. We're going to move the camera around a little bit, so let's zoom it in. I'll leave X alone there. Tilt it up, kind of a nice tilt. Bring it back down a little bit. Go back to our first keyframe, the beginning of the timeline, and I'm just going to zoom out. So we'll play that here. So zooming in from 0 seconds to 5 seconds, and a hard stop. We'll just watch the bucket spin. Nice spin, very cool, and hard stop. And so there's no way anywhere in here you can't tell it to ease in, ease out. So I'm going to show you how to get around that and force Final Cut to do this. One of the things that you can do in almost any plugin, I believe every plugin for Final Cut, is because they're built inside of Motion itself, Apple Motion. Hopefully you have that. So you'll right click on this and say open in Motion. And it's going to open this exact plugin inside of Motion here. Right away I'm going to say File, Save As. We're going to make a copy. So I'm going to name this Product Copy. I'm going to make it the same name, just with the word copy afterwards, and save it inside of the same place. So mObject, and hit Publish. That means it'll show up right next to the other one with the word copy next to it. Easy to find. If you're not familiar with Motion and all its layers and all the behind the scenes stuff that's going on, that's okay. You can follow this video and with almost any with the plugins and get kind of the same result. For this specific video, one of the first things I'm going to do is go into the camera controls here and see all these gears. They show gears for position Z, Y, X, rotation, Y, X, Z. Those are, that's nicely built that way, and I'll show you what that looks like if we go back to Final Cut. It's built that way in those gears so that when you're looking at this plugin, it shows up in a nice little drop-down menu up here. See, camera position X, Y, Z, rotation X, Y, Z. That's what these are, these little gears. I don't want those active or even messing with my camera, so I'm going to highlight all of them, delete them. I don't need any of the drop zones that they offer inside of this. I'm not using any drop zones. I specifically just want to worry about camera path and all that stuff. I don't want color balance or gradient blur on any of this, so I'm literally just going in and thinning this out, and I'll tell you why. Because when you go back to Final Cut, when I look over in this area on the top right here, I want all this cleaned up. As simple as my copy, the version I'm making, I want it all cleaned up, and that's the way to do it, is inside Motion. I only want to be looking at stuff that matters to me. That's what's nice about personalizing some of these plugins. I'm going to leave mObject. That is what that model is. I don't need the background drop zone. So that, again, this all looks the same. I just got rid of some of the extra stuff they put in here. I'm going to leave everything else. So here's how to force all the keyframes to make Bezier movements, or ease in, ease out. All right, first thing I'm going to do is go to Camera, Properties, and where it says Position and Rotation, I'm going to publish those. And what that means when you publish is that means that once you save this, these properties, Position XYZ, Rotation XYZ, will show up in Final Cut, meaning that you can control the keyframes in Final Cut. Then I'm going to go down to mObject, and I want to publish the Y rotation. That's all I want to see, is the ability to control the Y rotation. So I'm going to click on the little down arrow and hit publish. Now we've got the camera controls and the Y rotation published. That means it's going to show up in Final Cut when we open our copy. The next step, let's go back up to camera, is I want to make a keyframe mark at the beginning of the timeline on all of the position, all of the rotation of the camera, and also I'm going to tell it to show in keyframe editor. Show in keyframe editor, so that means down here in keyframe editor, which you can get to by either clicking on or off over here. And then the last thing I want to show up in and as a keyframe in the keyframe editor is my mObject Y rotation that I just published. So I'm going to click keyframe on that, just one. And I'm going to right down click on that and say show in keyframe editor. Alright, so I've got everything that I want to be Bezier in Final Cut showing up down here. You're going to select the top one, hold shift down and select the bottom. So that selects all those. Just click this little down arrow, interpolation Bezier. So that should, and it's good to double check, tell all of these to be Bezier. We're not going to put a keyframe anywhere else on this. This specific plugin is built to be as long or as short as you want it to on a Final Cut timeline, so we're not going to mess with any more keyframes anywhere else in the timeline. Okay, let's go up to File, Save. That will save your product copy. Alright, let's go over to Final Cut. Let's delete this old one off the timeline. And as you can see in the window here, Final Cut isn't showing the product copy because it just needs a little window refresh. So just click anywhere else and go back to it, and there we go, it shows up. We're going to drag it down. Let's drag this out to 1 minute again, just like our last one. You're going to notice right away up in the top right corner here, this all looks very much the same from the original generator, but we're not going to mess with any of these camera controls. Remember, we deleted the gears and all that fancy stuff in Motion. We're not going to mess with that stuff now. So how do you control the camera and all the position stuff? Well, let's come down to the bottom. Remember when we clicked publish on camera position and rotation, and also the Y rotation of the 3D object? They all show up at the very bottom of this right window now. One quick note on what keyframe to make first. You're going to want to make it at the very end of your project. So if you're making a 30-second commercial, you're going to want to make the keyframe here at 31 or at 32. In order for the keyframes to keep the Bezier rule, or the ease in, ease out rule, all the keyframes need to be made within inside that first keyframe and this last keyframe. So I'm going to show you what I mean. I am going to keyframe this all the way out at the very end. So we've got camera position and rotation and the object Y rotation all marked at the very end. Final Cut remembers the first keyframe you make, which was at the beginning of the product, or it was at the beginning of the generator, but for some weird reason inside here, it doesn't know where the heck that keyframe is. Because you can hit back to try to find that original keyframe. It's nowhere in time space in Final Cut. It's just there, it exists. Alright, now I'm going to go to the beginning of our timeline and actually do some animation here. Alright, I'm going to mark a keyframe on position, rotation of the camera, and rotation of the object itself. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just to kind of start this in the area I want it. So we'll say we'll start there. Let's move forward 5 seconds. And let's start messing around with camera movements here. Let's go, I'm going to zoom way in. Kind of tilt the rotation of the camera up. I'm also going to add a Y rotation. So I'm just going to spin all the way around to here. There we go. It eased in and slows to a stop right there. The only side effect you're going to see and notice here if we open up show video animations, is the fact that the scene wants to keep going back to this keyframe we made way out here. That's a totally fine side effect to the ability to gain Bezier movement. There's lots of ways to freeze a scene on a spot that you want to see it at. If you need it to stop right here and stay here, you can always go up to Edit, Add Freeze Frame, and that'll make a solid picture right in here, and you can drag that picture out, that solid JPEG, as long as you need it to stay still. Or the other way to do this is to go to where your keyframe is here and pay attention to what these numbers are. You know, if you need this to last for another 10 seconds, go to 15 seconds here, and go back and copy those numbers here, and it'll stay still for this gap of time. So that's pretty intuitive. I know it's a little bit frustrating to have to deal with the fact that this keeps going back to its original keyframe, but you gain Bezier movement in all of the camera moves and all of the objects spin. So there you go. I hope this video helps.